בפרק היחס בין שתי אמיתות, שורה 5 בחוברת, המכונית היא אמת מוסכמת ולא מוחלטת.
Okay. Clear? Okay. Good. So, therefore we say the two truths are one nature. But that, not one, but they're very much connected to each other in a very direct way. The fact that the two truths are different phenomena about one nature refers to the true truth in relation to a particular phenomenon, of course. We're not saying that all conventional truths are one nature with all ultimate truth. As the example I've just given, this truck is a conventional truth, and its ultimate nature is its quality. Right? So that's important to understand, because otherwise we may think there's an ultimate truth of the truck here and a truck over there. No, they're very much connected with each other. It's important to understand that. They're very much connected with each other. So, therefore, just as the shape of the truck is not its shape, is it? The truck is not its shape. The truck is not its color. But the color of the truck and the shape of the truck, they're all of one nature. If you destroy if you do something to the shape, you do something to the truck, and vice versa. Okay? So in that sense, they're one nature. So this is important to understand, because there is a lot of misperceptions. People naturally feel that they're separate somehow. All right, and this is also said, Nagarjuna, he says in his commentary on the Mind of Enlightenment, he said, such as is not observed to be a different nature from the conventional. The conventional is taught to be emptiness. Emptiness itself is the conventional. What does that remind you of? Yes, the Heart Sutra. Very good, and it be explained down here. One does not occur without the other, just as product and impermanent are one nature, and one does not occur without the other. All right, so then it's explained. The first two lines, so this is considered an important passage. So the first two lines explain, such as is not observed to be a different nature from the conventional. The first two lines explain that the conventional truth, so the first two lines of this commentary on the Mind of Enlightenment, they explain that the conventional truth and the ultimate truth are of one nature. Then the next two lines give two reasons for why that is true. Okay, so the next two lines are: the conventional is taught to be emptiness. Emptiness itself is the conventional. So the first reasoning is all conventional truths are empty of being truly existent. So therefore, their emptiness is of one nature with that which is empty of. And the emptiness of being truly existent is posited on the basis of conventional truth. Even that is dependent. Even the ultimate truth of the truck depends on the truck. It's an interdependent phenomenon. Okay? So it may seem like, why do we talk about all these nitty-gritty details? But over time, you'll see how this is really important, understanding that. As you know, this probably not being the last time, or maybe it's the last time you want to hear about it, but in case you want to continue after this and you want to hear more about this, this will help you, this understanding. Then the last two lines explain that the two truths are further related in a way, because they are one nature, in which one does not exist without the other. That is, the ultimate truth of the car or of the truck does not exist if the conventional truth, the truck, does not exist. And the conventional truth, the truck, does not exist if the ultimate truth of the truck doesn't exist, right? The example helps to illustrate, the example that illustrates this is being a product and impermanent. Being a product means to be produced by causes and conditions, and being impermanent. You know, something is a product is necessarily impermanent, and vice versa. So that's just an example for saying, if the product goes out of existence, that product's impermanence goes out of existence. And if the impermanence of a product goes out of existence, the product goes out of existence. Yeah? That's kind of the example for that.
It's impermanent because it has a start?
Pardon?
It's impermanent because it has a start?
Because it changes moment by moment, but it came into existence through causes and conditions. Yes. Can this wait? Because that seems to be a question that goes off a little bit. If it can wait, please. It's only, otherwise I won't be able to finish, so I'd leave it towards the end. And maybe it will be answered in the process. The other ones too, unless it's a clarification.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I always had such difficulty with the Heart Sutra. You've made it so clear in terms of how these two truths are interdependent.
Oh, I'm glad.
The form is emptiness, emptiness is form, it always...
Okay, good, okay.
You've really clarified it.
Well, anyway, there'd be a little bit more. Maybe actually it would be more confusing. But let's see. Okay, great. All right. But okay. So the ultimate truth of the car does not exist if the conventional does not exist, and the conventional truth of the car. All right, that's clear. But even though the true truth of one nature, they are contradictory. Nothing is both. All right, so they're so closely, but nothing is both. So it seems like, oh, if they're contradictory, they have to be totally different. That's again our mind. Oh, if there's nothing that's both, they're totally different. That doesn't mean that, right? Okay. Because there's nothing that is both a conventional and ultimate truth. There's nothing that is both a conventional and ultimate truth because there's nothing that is both deceptive and non-deceptive. Because a conventional truth, to a direct perceiver, it appears to in a way in which it doesn't exist. The ultimate truth, to a direct perceiver, it appears the way it exists. Remember? Yeah? Okay. So now, the relationship between the true truth is also expressed in the following passage from the Heart Sutra. That is like the heart of the Heart Sutra. Okay? Form is emptiness, emptiness is form, emptiness is no other than form, form too is no other than emptiness. These 4 lines teach the 4 profundities. The profundity of the ultimate, the profundity of the conventional, the profundity of the true truth being the same nature, and the profundity of the true truth being nominally distinct. Okay. So, form here refers to what? The physical form aggregate. Actually, in the Heart Sutra, it first talks about the 5 aggregates, right? Then the 12 the 12 spheres, then the 18 constituents, then the 4 noble truths, and so forth. So it starts with the 4. It starts with the first one, the form aggregate, and then basically you should do the same with all the other objects, right? In your mind. For feeling is emptiness, emptiness is feeling, feeling is not other than, and so forth. So with the 5 aggregates. But here let's just take the form aggregate, the body. The form aggregate is a conventional truth, whereas the form aggregate's emptiness, lack of inherent existence, is an ultimate truth. Okay. Form is emptiness teaches the first profundity of the ultimate because it shows that the form aggregate's emptiness of inherent, it shows the form aggregate's lack of inherent existence. Form is emptiness just means form is empty of inherent existence. That's pardon?
By definition.
By definition, absolutely.
No, really.
Okay. All right. Emptiness is form. Now this is a little hard. What does emptiness is form mean? It means it teaches the second profundity of the conventional, because it teaches the fact that the form aggregate exists because it lacks inherent existence. Yes. Therefore, the form aggregate is a kind of manifestation of emptiness. Yeah, it's a kind of like, it only exists because it lacks inherent existence. If it was inherently existent, it couldn't even exist. Right? It'd be bizarre. Yes? Maria.
Stuck is the same thing.
It'd be stuck as the same thing. It could never change. It could not be a body with the blood circulation and moving around, because it'd be permanent, independent, you know, couldn't even eat food and make it part of the body. Right? Okay, very good. Okay, so therefore, emptiness is form means basically the form is actually arising from the emptiness. It's only possible because it lacks inherent existence. Okay. Furthermore, the form aggregate and its ultimate truth are one nature, are of one nature. I should be are of one nature. I first said are one nature, and then I changed it are of one nature, and some of these haven't made it all the way through. Anyway, so furthermore, the form aggregate and its ultimate truth are of one nature, because the form aggregate's ultimate truth is a characteristic of the form aggregate. Right? It's a characteristic, it's an attribute of it. This is expressed in the line, emptiness is not other than form, which teaches the profundity of the true truth being the same nature. Right? Because the conventional truth, the form aggregate, is of one nature with its ultimate truth, the form's lack of inherent existence. However, even though they are of one nature, again should be of one nature, they're not identical, but two nominally distinct phenomena. Okay? This is expressed in the line, form too is not other than emptiness. Right? It's not that obvious in the words, but we need to interpret it here. Which teaches the profundity of the true truth being being nominally distinct. So in other words, they're very, very close. You can't have one without the other, but they're not the same. Okay. Contradictory. They are contradictory, absolutely. They're contradictory, but not disconnected. Right? I mean, there's lots of things like that. The shape of my body and the color of my body are contradictory, but you couldn't have one without the other. Okay? It's really that easy. But to our mind, especially when you get to really getting into emptiness, they seem to be separate. It's just how our mind works. Oh, inherently different. Okay. If they were, and this is now that what follows is easy to understand, so I will just read it. If there's some explanation that's needed, I'll give it, but this is just, if the true truth, can it wait? Clarification? Yes.
I think, listening to, there may be a problem with the Hebrew translation of the last sentence.
Okay.
I think it's form is no other than emptiness in English, right?
Emptiness is not other than form, that's the third line.
And the
Form too is not other than emptiness.
Yeah, and the Hebrew is a bit different.
Okay, for all of you to know, as he just pointed out.
17 last time. So maybe if someone reads them, it may be confusing.
Okay, in Hebrew it's slightly different, so please compare the English with the Hebrew. Okay. But if, so therefore the true truth are different phenomena, but not of a different nature. They are not one phenomenon, but of one nature. Okay? It seems very tricky, but there is that kind of relationship. To us, it's like either they're one or totally separate, but there's a middle way. The Sutra Unraveling the Thought, it's a sutra by the Buddha. It cites 4 faults that occur if the true truth were not of one nature. If they were not one nature, a lot of absurdities arise. First of all, here I said the pot, because in the sutra it doesn't say truck. It says pot. So think of a pot, think of a vase. The pot's emptiness of being truly existent would not be the mode of abidance, the essential nature of the pot. It would not be its characteristic, right? The lack of inherent existence of the truck would not be its characteristic. It would be something else's characteristic. The mind that realizes the pot's emptiness of being truly existent would not overcome the mind that apprehends the pot being truly existent. It might be totally unrelated, right? It could not overcome. So the axe, which is the mind that realizes emptiness directly, could not cut the ignorance that perceives inherent existence, because they're totally unrelated. It's got nothing to do with the other. The emptiness and the truck would not be related. Think about this. Some of these need some reflection.
You know about the 4 faults?
Do I know about them?
No, I'm trying to figure out what you're talking about.
I'm talking about if the truck and its ultimate truth were not of one nature, if they were totally unrelated, then these were the 4 absurdities, the 4 faults. The pot would not be the basis, the truck would not be the basis upon which the truck's being truly existent is negated. Right? The truck being truly existent is negated on the basis of the truck, not on the basis of something else. And the mind that realizes the pot's emptiness of being truly existent and the mind that apprehends the pot existing truly would both exist in the Buddha's continuum. Right? Because it would be truly existent. This would be truly existent because the lack of true existence would not connect to this truck. There would be a lack of inherent existence of the truck and a truly existent truck here. It sounds bizarre what I'm saying. It's so absurd that we go, what? Right? But these are the absurdities. Then, and also in the Illumination of the Thought, which is another commentary by Lama Tsongkhapa, he pointed out, Lama Tsongkhapa points out another fault, that if phenomena in their emptiness of being truly existent were not of one nature, phenomena would have to truly exist. That's the most obvious kind of, right? Okay, it's not being pointed here, but if the truck was not of one nature with the lack of inherent existence, it would have to exist truly, inherently. Right? It's as easy as that, actually. But I've given you first the sutra because it's a sutra, so I give that first to you. But this is kind of more obvious, this fault. But the Sutra Unraveling the Thought also cites 4 faults that occur if the two truths were one, if they were exactly the same. Then, direct perceivers in a continuum of ordinary beings, when they perceive a truck, would be able to realize the ultimate nature of the truck. Right? Afflictions would arise in dependence on perceiving the pot's emptiness of being truly existent. I would get angry when I perceive the truck. No, when I perceive the emptiness of the truck. Because the truck and the emptiness of the truck are the same. Right? I mean, anyway, it's not hard to understand, but I just thought to get the complete kind of presentation. These are not so hard. The pot's emptiness of being truly existent would have color and shape. Right? Because the truck has color and shape. Okay? Oh, sorry, the pot's emptiness. So the truck's emptiness of inherent existence would have a color and a shape. It would be able to roll around. You could take it apart. It would be a reified object. It would not be just a negation, an absence. And there would be no need for yogis to make an effort in realizing the pot's emptiness of being truly existent. You look at the truck, you know the emptiness. So they're not the same. Other faults that are described in other texts are, just as there's no diversity among ultimate truth. There's no diversity among ultimate truth. Ultimate truth is lack of inherent existence. But there's diversity among conventional truth. Big truck, small truck, fast truck, slow truck, right? All this diversity you wouldn't find. Just as there are many conventional truths that are afflictive, delusional, lots of conventional truth. Anger, attachment, they're all afflictive, right? Arrogance. You would have lots of ultimate truth that are afflictive. Because anger and its lack of inherent existence would be the same. Right, it would be the same thing, yeah. It would be one truth. Conventional and ultimate would be the same. And one did not have to strive to search for the ultimate truth. The path to liberation would be beginningless. We would all be on the path of liberation. We all be realizing emptiness. So we anyway, so that is the absurdity. So they're not the same, but they're not totally different. See that? That's the main message here. They're not the same, but they're not totally different. Okay. All right. Now, next explanation is the conventional truth. So this becomes a little easier. All right. You can just calm down, slower gear, just relax, lean back. All right. So everything that's been so difficult, now it gets a little bit easier in the sense that we have been explaining the true truth. One saying is false, and the other one saying is true. Because the way it appears. Okay? So it's nothing to do with the truck being false, from its own side. It's only we're saying it's false because the way it appears to my mind, it appears in a mind in a way in which it doesn't exist. Whereas with the emptiness, that doesn't happen. When it directly appears, it appears the way it exists. But are there examples in everyday life where that is also the case? Let's see. Are there examples of phenomena where we can say one is a truth and one isn't? Or another word for that, being real or unreal. Now we use different words here, and they're used in Tibetan too, right? So you can use the word real in the same sense as truth here. But again, real means it appears the way it exists, okay? That's only what it means, to be real, right? Okay, let's see if it becomes clear. So just use the word false and unreal, and truth and real. Use them interchangeably. But remember what they refer to. Appear the way they exist. Don't appear the way they exist. Just in that way. Not exist and non-existent. Okay? Alright. In Tibetan, never mind, that's the Tibetan word. And it's explained, each word is explained. So what we're talking about is relative to the perspective of the world, being real or unreal. Relative to the perspective of the world. Not in general. Because in general, okay, in relation to the perspective of the world, this truck is real. Okay, it's true. But, for example, a mirage is not true. In relation to the world, it appears to be one way, but it's an unreal object. Okay? If I just give you the example, right from the beginning, it's clear. So generally, we don't make that distinction, real and unreal. Because all conventional truths are, in a sense, unreal. They appear one way, exist in a different way. Ultimate truth, when it appears to a direct perceiver, it exists the way it appears. So it's real. In that sense, not in this sense. Relative to that explanation. So relative to the perspective of the world, we can talk of unreal and real. And it helps us a little bit to understand this whole idea. So, okay, forget the first sentence. Madhyamika Svatantrika. That's a very different philosophical school. Forget about that sentence. But we're talking about the highest philosophical view. According to the highest philosophical view, this is not correct to say all conventional truth, that you can divide conventional truth into real or unreal, because they're all unreal, they're all deceptive, they're all false. But you can do it from the perspective of sentient beings. So, therefore, conventional truth are actually real and ultimate truth, unreal and ultimate truth are real. So that I've just explained. However, relative to the perspective of the world, objects which are not ultimate truth, so everything that is not an ultimate truth can be categorized into real and unreal. Anything that's not an ultimate truth. It doesn't just include conventional truth, it also includes non-existence. Phenomena that don't exist. Anything that is not an ultimate truth. Okay? can be divided into something real or non-real. And Chandrakirti says so. Okay, so I'll explain to you. Objects that are real relative to the perspective of the world. Objects that are real relative to the perspective of the world are objects of correct consciousnesses that are considered to be unimpaired and unmistaken by those who have never taken emptiness to mind. Let's say emptiness doesn't exist. If you've never taken emptiness to mind, for you emptiness doesn't exist, right? If you've never taken it to mind, emptiness doesn't exist. All right. So therefore, for you, a car, for example, is real. It exists the way it appears. To my eye consciousness, it appears to be a car, and it is a car. Right? It's real. The appearance of inherent existence, that's of course real, true, right? I don't have a problem with the appearance of inherent existence. So relative to the perspective of ordinary people, it's real. Okay? So for those who have never heard of emptiness, it's actually mistaken with respect to the inherent existence, but not relative to that person. Okay? So relative to that person, the car is a real object because to the mind, it exists the way it appears. Okay? Also, therefore, even though conventional awarenesses are mistaken with regard to the appearance of inherent existence, so the eye consciousness is mistaken with regard to the inherent existence, but it can still know the car. It can incontrovertibly know the car, right? So therefore, it can distinguish between a reflection in a face and a real face. Yeah? So in the world, our mind can function. That's the message here. Relative to the perspective of the world, this is a real object because our mind can perceive it except for its lack of inherent existence. Everything else it can know about this. Right? So it's a real object. But on top of that, other examples, an inherently existent truck is also real from the perspective of the world. Because, what did we say? Relative to the perspective of the world means that something exists the way it appears for someone who has never taken emptiness to mind. If I ask my mother, does this truck exist inherently? She says yes. If you ask your relatives, other friends who've never heard about Buddhism, they all would say, this truck exists inherently. So therefore, an inherently existent truck is real relative to the perspective of the world. The truck is, and the inherently existent truck. In fact, to sentient beings, they're the same thing. An inherently existent truck and the truck are the same thing. Does that make sense? So they're all real relative to the perspective of the world. Now let's look at the things that are unreal relative to the perspective of the world. Objects that are unreal relative to the perspective of the world are objects of any of the six sense consciousnesses that are considered to be impaired or mistaken, even by those who have never taken emptiness to mind. Right? So forget about emptiness, mistakes. Okay. A reflection of a face in a mirror. How does a reflection of a face in a mirror appear? It appears to be the face. Okay? It's unreal. It's less real than this car. It exists, but we get mistaken with it easily. Therefore, it's unreal. Does that make sense?
It's real as a reflection.
It is real as a reflection, but it's unreal because the way it appears to the mind, it appears in one way and exists in a different way. This is the whole idea of real and unreal. This truck, from the point of view of the Madhyamika, from the point of view of emptiness, is false or unreal because it appears to be inherently existent, but it isn't. Likewise, an everyday kind of example is the reflection of a face in a mirror. It is relative to the perspective of the world. It is unreal or false because it appears one way and exists in a different way. It appears to be a face, but it's not a face. Does that make sense?
Yes.
With everything we've learned so far, taking it back to the emptiness, it's like an example, an analogy. And I've taken it to the end because Lama Tsongkhapa took it more towards the end. So I go according to the same order here. I could have talked more about this in the beginning, but this is where it is traditionally in the text. Okay, if that makes sense. All right. So, therefore, a reflection of a face in a mirror. The conventional mind that apprehends the reflection of a face of a mirror is a mistaken awareness, even from the perspective of those who are not directed towards emptiness, those who have never thought about emptiness. Other examples for objects that are unreal relative to the perspective of the world, are a person's echo. A person's echo. Whoa, 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 whoa. So that the echo seems to be the person's voice. It appears to be the person's voice, but it isn't. It appears one way and exists in a different way. That's why it's false or unreal in this context, right? Only in
Like
this
the
context.
voice here, which seems to be your voice.
That's another example. I shouldn't have said person's echo. I should have taken a modern day example. The person coming through a microphone. That's actually a good idea. A sound box. That's a much better example. That's a kind of, echo. It's a very typical Tibetan example. Think of mountains and gorges and, people shouting. So it's a Tibetan example. I should have taken that example. Very good. Or a radio voice, or a TV voice, whatever. It appears to be the actual person's voice, but it isn't. A mirage of water. Well, Israel got a huge desert. So, or huge, relative. So like the look, I've got a desert area. So you see a mirage of water, right? You don't just need a desert, you can look at a street, and it's really hot. It's a mirage of water. Okay. A dream elephant. A dream elephant. If you dream of an elephant, it seems to be a real elephant, but it's only an elephant in your dream, it's not a real elephant. Right? If you dream of an elephant in this room, it's not actually in this room, it's only a dream elephant. Okay. A rainbow. Israel. Israel how?
No, is real.
Israel is real. The way it appears. Relative to the perspective of the world.
Word is real.
I thought you said Israel. I thought you said Israel.
The rainbow is real.
The rainbow is real. No, it's not. It's unreal. It's unreal relative to the perspective of the world because it seems to be something you can hold on to. It seems to be something tangible. You can actually go there and meet it there. But the rainbow keeps moving. It never. You see, it's unreal in the sense it appears to be in a certain position that if you walk there, you could go and actually perceive it closer. But you can never get closer. Yeah, like the moon and sun. There's lots of examples. I mean, just for the sake here, it's like everything in a sense. You could say there's some, right? But do you get the idea? Yes.
I don't have a problem with the idea,
okay.
But there is a reality in perception.
Yes.
And the perception of the rainbow is that it is splitting the light. In its effect of splitting the light, it gives us color.
Yes.
From all color that is non-existent, we only know this from the rainbow.
Okay, so from that perspective, it's a very useful object to think about it.
Yes.
But I'm saying it is unreal from the point of view that it appears one way.
Object,
yes. But other than that, yes, it's not saying that these objects are not very, very helpful.
Yes.
Right? It's a very, we can learn from rainbows, of course. Yes. Okay.
It's the same as reflection. If you perceive the reflection as a reflection, it's real as a reflection.
Yes, exactly. It's real as a reflection.
If you perceive it as a rainbow, which is non-tangible and so forth,
yes.
then it's real like that.
Okay, but usually our eye... Yeah, okay, let me say this. It's not so much talking about knowing it intellectually. Then it's a different matter. But our senses, this means our sense consciousnesses. Even though you know in your mind, I mean, we know that the reflection of a face is not, you don't scratch the mirror, you scratch here when you've got an itch because you don't think it's your face there, right? But it still appears that way. The optical illusions that due to our eye consciousness still appears that way. That's the same idea here. Even you realize emptiness, the truck will still, until you become a Buddha, appear to be inherently existent. Okay? This is what I'm trying to get at here. So, all right. This I need to slowly take you there. This explanation is important, and then I'll take you there. That why we say this truck is unreal. Okay? Only from one perspective. It is real as a truck. It is unreal because it appears to be inherently existent. Just as the reflection in the mirror, it is real as being a reflection, but it's unreal because it appears to be a face. Okay? Same idea. Everything else that you said is true. But I'm just looking at it from one side to get one understanding. Okay. Therefore, the conventional awareness at present... Okay, done, I got that. Examples for non-existent objects that are unreal relative to the perspective of the world. You can also have unreal, non-existent phenomena. For example, the horns of a rabbit. Classic Tibetan example. The rabbit has two long ears, and from afar, one kind of tilts over, it may look like it's got horns, right? The ears appear to be the horns. The horns of a rabbit don't exist. I don't know, they're obsessed with horns of the rabbits in Tibet. I mean, it's like a classical example. It's like rabbits out in the plain, you're far away. Oh, that rabbit got horns, right? Okay. The reflection of a face in a mirror being a real face. The reflection of a face exists, but the reflection of the face in the mirror being a face, that doesn't exist. That's also unreal, right? Because even though it's not a face, it appears to be a face. The reflection of a face in a mirror being a face, that appears to be as a real face, okay? So you can have two types of mind. You can have an eye consciousness that knows this is a reflection, but it still appears to be a face. But you can have an eye consciousness that actually also thinks there is a face. I don't know, these funny cartoons or these funny videos on YouTube where you have a little cat walking past a mirror, and then the moment it sees itself, it goes, it's like thinking there's a real cat there, right? Not being aware that's a reflection. Or babies look at the reflection and go, oh, and then walk towards it. Right? So, I mean, elephants apparently are aware that the reflection is actually a reflection, but some animals may not be aware, especially not initially. When they get used to it, they know. So, you see, there's an example of where you have an eye consciousness which perceives the reflection to be a face, okay? And therefore it also appears that way. Or you know it's not a face, but it still appears that way, okay? So we are usually the people that know that the reflection is not a face. We've learned that. It still appears, we can't help it. Optical illusions, they still appear to be that way. That voice still appears to be my voice, even though you know it's not. It appears, but it doesn't. I don't actually hold that to be the case. There's a difference, right? Okay. So therefore you can have non-existent phenomena that are unreal. Because they... Pardon? What about thoughts? Can you be more precise? Which example do you use? Thoughts themselves. I think they're real, relative to the perspective of the world. They appear to be thoughts, and they are thoughts. Right? Their objects are not always real. Okay? I can think of, I don't know.
A unicorn.
A unicorn. Well, I don't know whether unicorns exist or not. Are you sure? 100% sure? Okay. I don't
There's
know.
a rhinoceros with one horn, but it's not a unicorn.
Well, just because it's not here in Israel doesn't mean it's not somewhere else. So it can't be on another planet? Never mind. Never mind. It's on this earth. Okay.
You cannot be sure.
Yeah, I mean, never mind. It's not important. Okay. So example for non-existent objects that are unreal relative to the perspective of the world are the horns of rabbit, the reflection of a face in the mirror being a real face, a person's echo being a person's voice, an elephant in a dream. The dream elephant exists. An elephant in a dream doesn't exist. Right? That's a difference. It doesn't really, there's no elephant in the dream, no real elephant. It's just a dream elephant. A permanent partner's independent self doesn't exist. Okay. As explained above, this distinction of real and unreal object is only relative to the perspective of the world. It is not from the point of view of the Madhyamika Prasangika system. It's not from the point of view of the philosophical Buddhist system, the highest Buddhist philosophical system. And therefore not relative to the perspective of an Arya being, or someone who's realized emptiness directly. Arya being is just another word for someone who's realized emptiness directly. I promise there's not a lot more technical stuff coming up. Okay, so it's just relative to the perspective of the world. Also, the distinction between an object being real or unreal is made in dependence on the awareness apprehending the object. And because in general all conventional awarenesses are mistaken, all conventional truth must be unreal. Right? All conventional awarenesses are our conventional. So in sentient beings, all our conventional minds are mistaken with respect to the appearance of inherent existence. Okay? All right. So now I tell you a story. The story in here, which is it's a beautiful story to describe relative to perspective of the world how this works. Okay. So there's a story that Buddha Palita, a great Indian scholar or Indian master, told. It's in his commentary. The commentary happens to also be called Buddha Palita's commentary. Anyway, so in this commentary, he tells the story of two people, two villagers. They look at a painting at a wall. Okay? And the painting on the wall is two gods. Two gods, right? Okay, one god is God Ishvara, or possibly Shiva. I think, yeah, Ishvara is just another word for Shiva. And the other one is an image of Krishna. Two Indian kind of gods of the Indian mythology. So, one villager identifies the image of the goal of the god that holds a wheel to be Shiva or Ishvara. The other one says, and the other god that holds a trident to be Krishna. But the other villager says the other way around, and the other villager is right. The god that holds a wheel is Krishna, and the god that holds a trident is Shiva. Okay? But they're looking at images at the wall. And one says this is Shiva, this is Krishna, and the other one says the other way around. And so they ask an ascetic, a wandering ascetic, and they ask him, which one is this a god or is not a god? In reality, none of them is a god. It's just pictures on the wall. They're not gods. Right? To them they are, but the ascetic knows they're not. But relative to their understanding, he would then say, yes, this is Shiva and this is Krishna, knowing what the actual nature is. So likewise, relative to the perspective of the world, we can say one thing is more real than something else. But from a Buddha's point of view, who knows the actual nature of phenomena, a Buddha would say all conventional truths are unreal, and only ultimate truth are real, because they appear the way they exist, whereas the truck doesn't. Do you see the difference? You see the story, how the story tells this? How actually, so therefore the Buddha speaks according to our understanding, right? Like the picture on the wall. Oh yeah, you say it's real, it's unreal. Yeah, it's relative to their understanding. One is Shiva, one is Krishna. And so the one who is wrong, okay, so you're wrong, you're right. But in the end, they're all wrong, because none of them is a god. Okay? So likewise, we think this is real, inherently over there, independently. Okay? But the Buddha knows not. The Buddha therefore says, oh yes, it's this, it's that, but not inherently so. It's just accordingly. When we think of truck, we think of inherently existent truck. When the Buddha says an inherently existent truck exists, a truck exists, we think, oh, an inherently existent truck exists. The Buddha means a conventionally existent truck exists. Right? Likewise here, the wandering ascetic means the image of that Buddha, of that God, that represents the God. It's not the God. Whereas for them, it is the real God. Okay? When the Buddha says the I exist, compassion exists, we may right away think, oh, an inherently existent I, an inherently existent compassion, an inherently this, inherently that. Okay? But actually what the Buddha means is it exists because it's a conventionally existent I exists. Does that make sense? Yeah? So that is important to understand. All right. Now, oh, we're good with time. We're good with time. I can finish today, I think. All right. All right. Let me say a little bit. Mere conventionalities. Now, what have we heard so far? We've heard something very important. We, as ordinary beings, we perceive phenomena to be inherently existent. We have ignorance. We have misperception. And every now and then it comes up. It's a question of learning to identify it. We actively apprehend, especially at times of strong emotions, mental consciousness arises and apprehends inherent existence. Right? Sounds familiar? Every now and then. I mean, it's hard to identify it. We're not even aware we have those minds. Some of them are even there on a subconscious level. Some of them are on a coarse level. But because we're so busy about thinking about the person who's harmed us, we're never even aware that we perceive them to be inherently existent bad. Right? Inherently existent negative, or inherently existent undesirable. Right? We don't perceive. But this is because, but it still happens because the reason we have anger and attachment is because we still have that ignorance that pops up every now and then. Right? So therefore, to us, this truck, for example, is a truth. Because to our ignorance, it is a truth. Really, it is true. It is a true object to our ignorance that perceives this truck to be truly existent. It is a true, real object. It's a truth. To that mind, if that mind was a person, I mean, I sound like as if it was a person, but, you know, if that mind was a person, if you were to ask that mind, does this truck exist exactly the way it appears? It would say yes. Right? And those of us who've never heard of lack of inherent existence, right, who have ignorance, we all have ignorance. Before we heard about this, if I were to ask you, does this truck exist inherently, we would all say yes, right? Because of that mind that we've carried with us. So right now, we may have memorized saying no, right? You know, say no, but it's not exactly what we feel, honestly, right? And we need to connect with what we feel. This is why this should not just stay up here. You should take it inwardly. Recognize your own misperception of reality, okay? You need to recognize that. But, all right, we've seen this much. We have the apprehension of inherent existence. On top of that, everything appears to be inherently existent, right? It appears to be inherently existent. But it is possible. You can reach, before you become a Buddha, there's a stage in between where you don't have any ignorance anymore, but phenomena still appear to be truly existent. Does that make sense? You get rid of the ignorance, get rid of the delusions, but still phenomena appear to be inherently existent because you still have the imprints. Who are those people?
Arya.
There's a different word. I think you mean the different. Arhats. Arhats. Arya just means you've realized emptiness directly. Arhat means you've overcome ignorance. Arhats. So, Arhats don't have ignorance. So to Arhats, this truck is not a truth anymore. To us, actually, it is a truth. Because we are still controlled by ignorance. Actually, because we're still controlled by ignorance, our ignorance is much stronger than our intellectual kind of mere assumption about emptiness. Our ignorance rules us. Okay? That's why we can say, as long as we have ignorance, to us this is a truth. Because as long as we haven't overcome ignorance, it's the mind that rules us. It rules us. Our ignorance rules us. Everything we do is ruled by ignorance. I'm sorry, it's bad news, but that's the way it is. Right? We're totally controlled by the mind that appears, that holds phenomena to be inherently existent. It's an innate mind that even a bodhisattva, just before, everyone just before becoming an arhat, anyone, before they become an arhat, they still have that ignorance. It's that deeply ingrained. It's deep. It can be very subconscious. You may have realized emptiness directly, but as long as that mind that realizes emptiness directly, that axe, has not cut through the ignorance, the subtlest level of ignorance, you still are ruled by ignorance. Sorry, that's all. It's like that. Okay, it becomes less. The delusions become less, but they're still there. So for you, as long as we still have that ignorance, as long as we're not arhats, for us, these things will be truth. This truck is a truth. It's real. Yeah, it is real. I am real. It's all real. It seems to us to be real. But what about if someone gets rid of that ignorance? Yeah, like a Hinayana Arhat, a Mahayana Arhat, someone who's overcome ignorance. All right? What about them? What are these phenomena? They are mere conventionalities. They're not truth anymore. They're mere conventionalities. So to them, it's different. They're mere conventionalities. Why? Because even though they appear in one way, they don't exist in that way. They're not truth for them anymore. They don't have any mind that apprehends them to be truth anymore. So for them, they're mere conventionalities. That is the last thing, one of the last things I want to talk about. So I'll take maybe a few questions. I mean, really just 10 minutes, not more. A little bit, yeah. Just a few. So, okay. I know it's been full on. Okay, I'll take your questions, but please, as I said before, this is just a full on thing. And anything that if you've heard it was frustrating today, 100%, I can give you 100% guarantee the next time you really understand more. Okay, so it's just a matter of hang in there. Okay, anyway, I've said it plenty of times. Are there questions? Oops. Anything that you wanted to ask before, but I asked you to wait.
You gave an example, and I didn't understand, but you say something about blue, the color blue, which comes from...
Okay.
Is it an example that everything we saw before, or do you specifically say that colors are sort of imputed before.
The letter. I'm saying the letter. I'm saying exactly the letter.
I know that there is a sutra of color.
Well, no, nothing to do with the Sutra of Color. No. What I'm trying to say is the following. I mean, when we say phenomena are merely imputed, we seem to understand that. You get a sense, oh, I understood that. This is a truck because it's merely imputed, therefore it exists. But when we check a little closer, this is a little easier to understand. But you see, imputation doesn't just have to happen in this lifetime. When I was born, I didn't know this was a truck. So I had to learn from the beginning that this is a truck, this is a cup, and so forth. But when I was born, I could perceive blue. All right, I think I could perceive, I mean, I didn't know it was blue, but I perceived blue. I perceived colors, I perceived shapes, I perceived sounds, right? Most specifically, I don't know whether it's the sound of a dog or the sound of this. This needs to be further imputed. But then you could argue, if it's merely imputed, if yellow is merely imputed, do I not see it before I learn the term? I don't see a truck before I know a truck. I really don't. I mean, unless I know something similar. But let's say I see something I've never ever, I probably wouldn't perceive it. Just as when Columbus landed in America, it's said that the local Indians didn't see the boat. Right? That's the story. They didn't see the boat because they had no concept of it. So that is clear. But what about the colors that you're born with? Like, people always ask me that question. What about that? That's not merely imputed. I see it right from the beginning. You don't see color. No, you're black and white, but at least you see white or black.
Not only this, I think that you will know that you see different things that we call colors.
Different colors, yeah. Let's say this. Do you see different colors?
Different colors, but you don't have any perception of what the color actually
stands for.
Yes,
exactly. So you can't even see three-dimensional because three-dimensional has all to do with being able to get the concept of this is before, this is behind, da-da-da-da-da. I mean, again, this person who was blind from birth and was cured, she would probably bump against things. She wouldn't know what's before and behind. Because of the concepts we've learned, our eye consciousness can now see this is first, this is there. We can very much navigate. Very quickly we can navigate. But in the beginning, without having learned the concepts, we couldn't do that. But there were things that we could do in the beginning. So is that merely imputed? Yes, because since beginning this time, we have used the labels. We have. It's something we were born with. So it doesn't mean if you don't know the label of the truck, if you can't see that, you can't see anything at all. So it goes through lifetimes. But still, blue and so forth, it is labeled, it is merely labeled, and therefore we see it. And that's harder to understand, because that seems to be naturally there. But if it was not labeled, if it was there, it would inherently exist. This is hard to understand. There's different levels of understanding it, because if blue, for me to be able to perceive blue, if it was not dependent on imputation, that would mean that blue does not depend on imputation. If blue does not depend on imputation, it is not a dependent arising, arisen in dependence on imputation. Therefore, it must exist inherently.
but it's the same as car.
It's the same as car, of course, but I don't have a problem. I'm not born seeing a car.
You're not born seeing blue.
I am? No one needs to teach me that. Even if I live somewhere with no one ever teaches me the concept of something, right? I mean, with a truck, I really need some people to tell me. But other things, you don't think so?
You told the label.
Yeah, I told the label, but like, you see, like, I apply a concept. You see, if I do this, okay, if I do this, to someone who has not been taught that this is a pen, it performs this and this function, and this is a truck, they would think it's the same thing, possibly. Not know that these are different objects. Because learning the label is not enough. It's not just giving you the name, truck, because in every language you have a different label. I mean, even animals have concepts. And they're not necessarily taught. Okay, it's also through experience. Yes, that's true. But it's a mixture of learning from elders and forming your own concepts. But there are things that we know since we were born. You don't think so? You see shape and colors? You come out and you see shape and colors. You don't think you're blind and you have to learn? I mean, no.
You're not blind.
You hear voices, yes. Your tangibility. Since
Yes, but you learn by experience.
you add, of course, but there's a...
No, but there's a given. You don't know before. You learn by experience.
So you're saying you don't perceive anything? You don't in the womb. In the womb, when the mother eats cold food, you're not aware of that.
Yes, senses.
Yeah. So your body consciousness knows that there's coldness,
Yeah.
but it doesn't have to learn that. And the moment the senses are ready, it knows. So you don't have to learn that. I would argue, right? You can know that there's cold water going through your mom's belly, but of course that it is actual water, that you learn much later. But just the kind of sensation of coldness, that you know, right? In that moment.
Correct perception.
Yes.
So babies know how to breastfeed.
Yes, babies know how to breastfeed. No one needs to tell them that. Again, it's like it's said to be an imprint that comes from the past. So anything we've taken comes from the past. These are imprints. Specific imprints ripen, and only specific one ripens. If we have a human brain, then the coarse mind connects with that brain. And if it's a certain brain, only the human imprints, they ripen. Okay? Not the dog imprints or the kangaroo. We're not looking for a pouch. Right? When we're born, kangaroos instinctively look for a pouch. That is the imprint that ripens in their mental continuum, because they have the mental continuum is now has adjusted to the coarse level of the brain. So the brain of the kangaroo, the subtle mind of the mental consciousness of that kangaroo baby has become coarser and coarser, and now it works together with the brain. So only the kangaroo imprints can ripen. And we've taken rebirth as kangaroos since beginning this time. So, you know, there's no problem that we have those imprints. But so therefore, we have imprints. We carry things with us. We see colors, and we've imputed that in the past, and therefore we perceive them. That's my point. That's my whole point. If the color was not merely imputed, it couldn't exist, we couldn't perceive it, and it would have to exist inherently. Or it would have to exist inherently, I could say, right? If it has to be merely imputed, the color. But
Say it again, please.
I say it again. So, the color blue, I can perceive that. I don't know it is blue, but I have a concept of blue. I'm already born. I can see the difference between colors. I'm born with that ability. I'm born with the ability to perceive the difference between hot and cold. Even in the womb, I can perceive the difference. Why? Because I've imputed. My mental consciousness is able to impute the difference because it's been doing this since beginning of time. You don't have to newly learn this. This ability is always with you. Okay? To a certain or lesser degree. It depends, of course, if you have the sense faculty. But you see, our sense consciousnesses can actually only perceive things if mentally we have imputed. Because before I impute truck, I cannot perceive a truck. Does that make sense? Before I impute the boats of Christopher Columbus, before I have a concept of a boat, such as the boats in, you cannot perceive them. That's why a blind person, that's why a person who's been born blind, when they remove the bandages, when they are cured of their blindness and they remove the bandages, they don't see a truck. They see blurs of shape and color, but they don't see this is in the front, this is in the back. How could they? They have no three-dimensional knowledge. Does that make sense? Okay? I mean, some knowledge they gain very quickly. But that's why babies bump into things in the beginning. They cannot even see. They grab something and they miss very often. Have you noticed? They miss. They try to grab something and they miss. And they can hold it, but they don't get it. Because they don't see it the same way we do. They're not exactly sure where it is. They see a blur still. That's my theory.
They have that's my experience. They have a mind that compensates the inability of the eyes to see three-dimensional. I learned to see three-dimensional through the eyes when I was 24.
What?
I didn't see
Three-dimensional.
Through the eyes till I was 24.
How do you know?
Because when I was 24, a doctor told me that I don't see three-dimensional, and I went through a series of exercises to make the eyes see three-dimensional.
Oh, that's an interesting case. That's very interesting.
Yeah, it's change that happened at the age of 6. Until 6, they don't see
Until the age of 6, they don't see three-dimensional. That's interesting.
That's why it's not so healthy for little children to watch computers and all this in television, but now it's...
Everyone uses it anyway.
it's 3D. It's okay now.
Now it's 3D movies. That is very interesting. Okay. Anyway, I need to think about this, how this, but I guess, yeah, the mental consciousness can compensate a lot of things. So the mental consciousness helps us to perceive something with the sense consciousness that we couldn't have perceived if the mental consciousness hadn't done the job that it does. Does that make sense? Right? But yeah, certain cases, this one, I guess, even though the sense consciousness was never able to pick it up, the mental consciousness compensated for that. That would explain that, yes. But this is just, I mean, it's not really that clear on that, but I'm not that, I mean, with the colors, for example, but if we say we can perceive colors naturally, then it means they're not imputed. Does that make sense? So if there was never any imputation, that would not work. So it would have to exist inherently. That's the only logic behind it, but I don't know. Please keep checking on that. Yeah. Wait, let's have him first. You haven't said anything to that.
About the emptiness of emptiness.
Yeah.
Coming back to see if I get it correctly. The fact that even the emptiness lacks inherent existence is due to the fact that it does not inherently exist because the emptiness depends on the conventional truth, so they're interdependent.
Yes.
So it cannot. So if the truck disappears, the ultimate truth, i.e., the
ultimate truth of the truck.
The emptiness of the truck disappears, so it cannot inherently exist. So that is
that's one reason.
reasoning.
That's one reason, but it's merely imputed also.
Yes.
What is the lack of inherent existence? It's merely imputed on the basis of imputation. On an absence of this truck being able to establish itself. On the basis of that, we label this the ultimate truth of the truck. It's still, and we need to have a concept of that.
But in conventional truth, there's memory. If you take the truck away, there's memory the truck was there.
It's different object.
That's true. That's true. There's a memory that the truck was there. That's absolutely true. But that doesn't mean that the truck is still there just because I still perceive, I still remember it. Yeah? So I remember it, so I have a remembrance of that, but that doesn't make the truck actually being there. So you have a remembrance, but the truck is actually gone.
But yet its ultimate truth is gone?
Yes.
Its emptiness is gone.
Yes, it is. Okay. She hasn't said anything, so please. Here's the last one, and you have time in the afternoon. Okay? Yeah.
In the example of the blind man, that after the operation could not see anything, of course he have living for endless lifetimes.
Yes.
Why the deep imprints of seeing at least people, clouds, and like this? Why they don't?
Very, very good question.
Because, and we say the ignorance, it's
okay. Because, okay. Okay, I'll repeat the question. The question is, all right, she's saying that if the blind woman, the woman or man who was blind since birth and was cured and suddenly could see again but wasn't able to see, why would she not be able to see people and trucks and so forth? Because actually she has the imprints from the past, just as we have the imprints of the ignorance. Okay, now there's a difference between the, first of all, the consciousness that perceives everything we know in this lifetime, we only know with a coarse consciousness. Therefore, everything you know, you only know with the coarse consciousness. We have not been able to utilize the subtler consciousnesses. That you actually just learn in Tantra, for example. You have to be a highly evolved person to be able to do that. But when we die, all the coarser consciousness is absorbed. We forget everything. That's why learning a language, you keep imprints. You leave imprints, and may therefore be easier to you relearn it. Okay, some people have maybe learned many languages in the past and they pick up very quickly. Others take longer because the imprints are fresher. However, you lose it, right? You lose it. So therefore, when you die, you lose all your knowledge. And only some of the imprints, the stronger they were and the fresher they were, the more you carry with you. That explains Mozart, for example. Maybe he was an incredible, musician in the past, and so he had these very fresh imprints that were kept, they were quite strong, and so therefore he could play, not right away, but it was quite easy. Now, there are imprints which are much stronger. Much stronger. We always shape and color. These are a little bit stronger. I would say. So they're stronger. Therefore, we can carry them with us. The ignorance, it's everything controls us. That's a really strong imprint. Okay? So there's certain imprints. And anyway, yeah, I mean, when the very subtle mind arrives, the very subtle mind is present, there's no ignorance. But the imprints are so strong, we effortlessly take them to the next life. Does that make sense? So the imprints of seeing trucks, or the imprints of seeing people, they're not that strong. It's just on a very coarse level, first of all. We don't see with the subtler kind of mind. With the subtle mind, you still have ignorance. Not the very, very subtle one, but even the subtler one. So because the mind is subtler, on the basis of which these arise, and on top of that, the imprints are much deeper, more frequent. It's just more, emotions are involved. Emotions are always stronger. Right? Does that make sense? I mean, it's hard to explain, but I can't explain this through my own experience. No way. I'm not even aware of that. But that would explain them. There's just some imprints that are much deeper.
I think that you said that he didn't learn it at the end. He could not see entire. He didn't learn to see things. And it sounds that this is not the whole explanation, because he had the imprint of.
But what I'm saying is, the imprints are not strong enough. Some of the imprints, like for example, if I've learned that this is a truck in this lifetime, this is a very coarse imprint. I've not been seeing life. I mean, I'm not always born as a human being. I'm not always born. I'm sometimes born as an insect. I don't always perceive the things. There's always ignorance. But the imprint of me, that's a very coarse imprint, and it may disappear when I die in this lifetime. The imprint I've left that allows me to see a truck every time now, that goes when I die. Therefore, I'm not reborn with the imprint again that allows me to see a truck. So this lady, or this man, also, these imprints didn't exist in the beginning. They had to be newly formulated.
I think there's a misunderstanding, because what Chaya understands that she never saw afterwards, whereas that was just the first moment that you were talking about.
Yeah, later on she learned it, but spontaneously?
Later on she learned
Of course. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't realize. Later on, of course she learned. She was just like a child who had to relearn.
I think I heard somewhere that she didn't learn. She could not see after this.
Oh, what I learned is, what I heard is that she did, but I think very limited. Because of course now our brain doesn't have the same ability anymore. You know, like children who were born in the jungle and raised in the jungle, like Mowgli, there's real stories of that, right? There were really people that were raised by wolves, for example. Now they did learn something, but certain things it was too late. Because also, pardon?
Yeah, they couldn't learn to speak.
They couldn't learn to speak, for example. So certain things, yes, I think she was able to learn to some degree, but never the way we've learned it. Because that ability of the brain, because the mind, the coarse mind, is very much dependent on the brain. And if the brain doesn't have that ability to make those connections anymore as it used to be, imagine how many connections we made as children. It's unbelievable. Every second we make so many connections. That ability is slowed down now. So I don't know, maybe she never learned it at all, but I think she learned a little bit, at least. I would be very surprised if there was no learning whatsoever, because even people who are 80, 90 years old learn things, right? My favorite example is when I ask the students that I teach to memorize, and they go, no, I'm too old. And then there's this example of this 76-year-old man who memorized 20,000 verses of some Greek myth, right? And he was able to recite all these verses. He was 76 years old. And then I'm saying, no excuses here. You can memorize this and this and this because this guy did it. So even a man at that age can do it, right? So of course there's been already some, but he's never done that when he was a young person. So there's still some abilities you have, but they're slowed down. Yeah. So I believe that there's still, to learn the language, maybe that's not possible anymore. And certain things not possible. But I don't think that the brain and the mind are that static that you cannot really approve in some way. But that's to be seen. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Oh, last, but really last, you haven't said anything, so.
The emptiness of the emptiness.
Yeah.
Bothers me.
Bothers you, okay.
Because emptiness is an absolute notion.
It's an absolute truth. It doesn't exist absolutely.
Absolute conception.
Okay, yes, it's absolute, yeah.
How can be absolute conception on top of absolute conception?
Because the ultimate truth is the absolute truth. It does not exist absolutely. You see, it's just a matter of how we define absolute truth. Ultimate truth just means it's the deepest nature of phenomena. But every phenomenon has that deepest nature. So even the emptiness of the truck has the deepest nature of not existing independently. Just think of it as not existing independently. Ultimate truth just means lack of independent existence. So even the ultimate truth of this truck does not exist independently. So therefore, there's also a lack of independent existence of this truck, which we call ultimate truth. Don't think of ultimate in the normal sense so much. The word is a little bit confusing, right? We had to borrow it from the English language. Forget about the way we feel about absolutes in everyday life. Okay, I need to leave it at that. I'm sorry. I'm really over time and I apologize. I don't want this to go into the meditation actually, because that's so important. This is when you slow down and actually start digesting things. But anyway, I'll see you again this afternoon, and hopefully I'll definitely finish this text, because now I've done a lot of the groundwork for this afternoon, and then I'll take more questions too.
Okay, so we do the short mandala in Tibetan, page 9. Sashi paki choshi meto jam ri rabli shini de gyempadi sangye shindu mite owa joko namda shila choba sho idam guru rana mandala kam niryatayami. We have 20 minutes break, and you're still in silence, okay? We are still in silence, okay? We are still in silence.